The Nuggets finally trade Bones Hyland for almost nothing. They do add Thomas Bryant. That's interesting. Kevin Durant joined the Suns. Don't know if you heard that. And we don't know what happened with the Magic game. All that and more. It's Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your week. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Friday as we recap the trade deadline. I was unable to get a live show in yesterday because I was exhausted from all of the chaos that erupted over the last 24, 36 hours, starting with the Kevin Durant trade, which we'll get to today. Today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. We're also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. Appreciate you guys joining us on all platforms. Lots of folks hanging out with us already in the chat. If you wanted more content, I did join Ryan Blackburn yesterday for his show because I had agreed to do so and was trying to stay awake before I completely fell asleep afterwards. You can catch that over at the Pick Action Roll podcast. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I have lots of articles up. You can check them out in the Action Network app. His name's Adam Mares. You can check out his stuff over at DNVR, including pre- and post-game shows, and a very good podcast I listened to yesterday about all of the goings on. Adam, is it fair to say, I'm trying to think of the right word, the impression I got from listening to the DNVR show was that you are, at the very least, underwhelmed by what the Nuggets did at the deadline?
So here's what I like about, having two shows, doing the DNVR one and then this one is the DNVR one is almost always an instant reaction. It's like the visceral, which I think brings a healthy level of emotion oftentimes, which I think is good. Like sports should be emotional. This one is usually the day after, which usually means you've digested some stuff and you have a little bit more, maybe depth to add to it. So I would say my thoughts with the deadline, if you separate what happened with Denver versus what happened with the league, I think those two things spill into each other. But if you just look at the Denver piece of this, they essentially traded Bones Hyland for Thomas Bryant. It's not the best deal. It's not something, if you would have told me that 6 months ago, I would have been like, oh my God, what a disaster. But I think given the circumstances, I look at it and I go, I'm intrigued to see what it does for Denver's team. And while I don't love the trade, it's not like a disaster or anything like that to me.
So the Nuggets trade Bones Hyland to the Los Angeles Clippers for 2 second-round picks. I don't have details on which picks those are at this exact moment. Do you have them?
The picks?
Yeah.
Well, the picks were the ones that came in. So this trade is actually one trade. It was actually done as one trade. The word came out separately, but the two picks that they got for Bones Hyland went to the Lakers for Thomas Bryant, plus one other one.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So they trade for the 2 second-rounders, and then those second-rounders go to the Lakers for Thomas Bryant. Let's talk about the Bones deal first. I tried a lot to soften this blow on this show to be like, hey guys, the market's real bad for Bones. I tried very hard to be like, you're going to be probably disappointed with what you get for him. And you wait to try and see if somebody's going to come in at the last second with some interest. There were some interested teams, but when I checked in on Thursday morning, it was still a little bit of interest, but nothing serious. And so I don't know. I don't think this one came about until, right when it did. I think the Clippers came in and were like, hey, we'll give you 2 seconds for, or the late.
I don't get that sense, Matt. I think that this was one of the deals that they had on the table. I don't think there was a lot out there for Bones. I just don't think the market was very excited about him. I think there were 2 or 3 teams that were willing to make offers, and this was the best one. So that kind of tells you. And I know a lot of people will say things like, now, if you critique, did his market get depressed, all that stuff, I think it's fair to question those types of things. But there just wasn't a better deal. It was very well known that Bones was on the market. And if nobody beat 2 seconds, 2 late seconds, really, then that kind of tells you where his value is.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I can tell you definitively, it's not like the Nuggets did not aggressively shop him. They didn't do, you know, it's like, you got to get more for him. You can't make people give you things for a distressed asset. And, you know, you could say like it shouldn't have been a distressed asset, or they should have waited until it wasn't distressed. And I wouldn't necessarily blame you for that view.
I agree.
I don't mind them moving on because of how immediate their goals are.
Yeah.
Most teams like have like a really long-term perspective of like, you wait for the right time. The right time is now for Denver, and you need everything to kind of be lined up. It does kind of show you, I think, that the Nuggets are not concerned about this deal coming back to bite them. You trade him to the Clippers, a playoff conference rival, right? You deal him in conference to a good team, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of like, you know, concern on that front. Now, part of this is just like you didn't have a lot of options. I'm sure that if they had their druthers, they would have traded him east. So I think that's why they talked to Toronto. But I'm not surprised that he's, you know, been moved on. Hope the best for him. Hope that he gets the kind of opportunity that he's looking for. Hope that the coaching is able to get where he feels comfortable and that things are good. But ultimately, I don't blame Denver for moving on. I don't blame Nuggets fans for being disappointed that this is how it ended, given how exciting he was for them.
Yeah, and just I think the broader point is there's two forces at play here. There is, how does an organization handle their players? You know, like, do they gain or lose value, generally speaking? And then there is like, how does a player manage his own value? Like, how does a player fit into the ecosystem? I think it's fair to speculate, for fans especially, I think it's fair to speculate on where there are mistakes on both sides of that equation. To what extent were those mistakes? I think those things are fair. I mean, Bones is a talented player. He might also have caused some problems behind the scenes, lost faith from the coaching staff and front office and at least some, if not most, of his teammates. But there's also a question of, I just think that it's a failure on the organization also when that happens, both from selecting the guy and also from like not, you know, just allowing it to happen. I'm not saying it's all the blame, but I just think an organization always has to look at it and say, we're not in the business of losing value on our players. And that happened this time.
I think that's fair. That's a good way to put it. I think I'm the highest on Thomas Bryant. I mean, 2 years ago, I was telling you on this show, like, hey, you know, Thomas Bryant, they brought in Gafford while he was hurt, and now Thomas Bryant's expendable. The Nuggets could go get Bryant. That would be a good pickup. I just really like Thomas Bryant. There's like, he's not playoff. There's somebody in the comments like he can't play in the playoffs. I think he can play in the playoffs. I don't think he'll be, if he's facing a good bench unit, he'll be a minus. If he's facing a bad bench unit, he'll probably be an even. If he's facing a really bad bench unit, it might be a positive. A lot of the defensive stuff that I've looked on in the past 24 hours, I'm encouraged by. I actually think that he's not necessarily as bad as kind of the perception of him is. And he gives a lot on the offensive end, just as being somebody who can produce. Like Thomas Bryant can produce offense, which is something that bench unit really needs, especially without a primary initiator now with Bones gone. They need somebody who can create some offense for them, and I think Thomas Bryant can. I think it's a good pickup. It helps resolve the ongoing, you know, curse of the backup center spot. It's an upgrade on DeAndre Jordan.
I mean, first of all, does it? I mean, is there any chance this becomes a JaVale McGee situation?
Some, probably. I mean,
he just comes in and doesn't play.
I think Thomas Bryant's way better than JaVale McGee. But what I think doesn't matter. Like what Malone thinks is what matters. And if Malone doesn't think he can play, then he won't play.
I think one of the things, I mean, I like Thomas Bryant as well. I think it's funny because he was not on my radar as a player. You know, I thought they were even looking at, or that was available.
And then I found out, it's fun. Sorry to interrupt, but just like I found out, like I was like, wow, when did they call you with this? And I was told like, oh no, yeah, we've been working on that for a while. I was like, thanks guys, thanks, appreciate the heads up.
Keep that one close. So, but the thing is it changes Denver's bench a lot. And I think that could be a good thing. The bench has not been good, so maybe it needed a change. But I do think it makes a question for who else now. What does the bench unit look like? And that might even lead into the buyout market because Denver, I guess it's hard to talk about this without talking about the game. But, you know, Ish Smith to me is the most hot or cold player I've ever watched in my life. Some of his stretches, I'm like, man, this guy could really be an impact piece. And then some of his stretches, like we saw last night, you're like, he's the least veteran point guard I've ever watched in my life. So I just have to assume from what I've seen that Ish is not going to be part of the rotation when everybody's healthy. So how does that shake out then? Brown and Brown, Thomas Bryant. How do you make a lineup around that?
I heard you talk about this on the DNVR show, and I want to stress my opinion on it. As of right now, until something changes with how people play or the health of people, like Vlatko Čančar is the backup 4.
But that's Matt Moore. What do you think? I mean, there's the weird balance of Matt Moore.
No, I'm saying I asked Malone about it.
Oh, you think he's leapfrogged Zeke and Jeff?
He said as much. Like Malone, and now again, Malone left it open, right? Because Malone's never gonna paint himself into a corner.
Yeah.
But I feel pretty strongly that he went to Jeff and was like, "Hey, I'm playing Vlatko over you," and Jeff was like, "It's cool, it's fine."
Okay.
Like that's good. So I think Vlatko's at the 4. I could look stupid by Wednesday. That's entirely possible. But I think it's Brown.
You did. Oh, by Wednesday. Okay, you did give yourself a week.
Yeah, I gave myself a week. Brown and Brown, Vlatko, and I think probably because they sunk an asset into it, Thomas Bryant will get a push. I do kind of wonder what the internal view is on Zeke, not just from a play perspective, but there's an availability issue here a little bit. Like Zeke gets banged up really pretty consistently for a guy that doesn't play a lot of minutes. Would you agree?
Yeah, I hate that label for players when it's a small sample size. Under the small sample size, that is true. I hate giving a guy the injury prone label when it's like this, because it might just be a string of bad luck. But so that's all I'll say about it. But he is banged up right now.
I didn't say he was injury prone. I just said he's had an availability issue.
I know.
But it has been a thing, and to me that's even worse, right? It's like if you're trying to get minutes and then you get minutes and then you can't play, that makes it even tougher to get.
It happened twice in a row. In fact, last year was right around this time that he got hurt again, and then ended up losing his spot in the rotation. He's hurt right now. I think it might be one that takes him through the All-Star break. And if that's the case, then you start to talk about how much longer before you lose momentum on getting that spot back.
And then there's also the matter of to me there's kind of a survival of the fittest thing here, where it's kind of look, if Thomas Bryant doesn't play well and Zeke plays well, then Zeke will wind up playing. And if Zeke plays well or if Thomas Bryant plays well and Zeke is banged up, then Thomas Bryant will settle into that role. I think they just want some consistency, and Bryant should be able to at least provide that, even if it's, a minus. Now, I will say the fact that he was unhappy with his playing time once Anthony Davis got back, that's a red flag. That's a little bit of a flag, right?
Do you think there's a world in which he would share the court with Jokic? Yes.
It was one of the first things that I thought about, was I think you could play these two in a too big lineup. I just think you can do that. Let's say they're facing the Los Angeles Lakers, who we know have had success in the past with too big lineups versus the Nuggets. If it's Davis and Bamba, I think Thomas Bryant and Nikola is a pretty good combo. Bryant's ability to spread the floor is, I think, important here. He is not DeAndre Jordan is a strictly roll big, and Thomas Bryant has some pop to him. And so that combination, I think, is helpful. A lot of the defensive stuff that I've looked at suggests that basically Thomas Bryant is decent to pretty good in every pick and roll defensive scheme except switch. You can't switch with him. And that's a problem because the strength of that second unit is switching. But if you're able to switch 1 through 4 and then you manage in the other situations, especially if you play at the level to apply pressure, I think that creates some consistency in scheme. And I actually kind of like that. So I'm pretty high.
Is there a long-term upside with him? Or is this is there a world where you see he lasts beyond a year?
Yeah, I think if he likes his situation, I think it's always about the money, right? It's always going to be about what the Nuggets are willing to pay and what he can get on the market. But I could absolutely see him being I'm going to stay another year and rehab my value and then hit free agency in another year. I could see that happening.
Okay.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the move that has everyone panicked. And that's Kevin Durant to the Suns. And I'll tell you why. Surprisingly, I would tell you things are going to be okay. We'll talk
This
about
is
that.
the least surprising of your takes.
Why?
I would have predicted that would have been your stance.
We'll talk about why after the break. But first, I got to tell you about Rocket Money. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. You can just try it free for 30 days. That's enough time to try and completely forget about a subscription or service. And before you know it, you're paying for a subscription you don't use every single month. With Rocket Money, you can change that with a quick few taps. So these try it for free for 30 days things, that's happened to me a lot, where it's like, you get a free trial for 7 days. I'm not going to remember in 7 days. I don't remember my own birthday. How am I going to remember to cancel this thing in 7 days? Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about, like that streaming service you bought to watch just one show on, or that free trial you never even used. Rocket Money will quickly and easily identify your subscriptions for you so you can stop paying for the ones you don't want. Simply find the subscription you don't want and press cancel, and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. No more long hold times with customer service or tedious emails back and forth. Rocket Money makes canceling subscriptions as easy as one click of a button. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Adam, why is it not surprising that I think the Nuggets are going to be okay after the Kevin Durant trade?
It's not surprising that you are lower on the Suns making that move.
Okay. So Kevin Durant goes to the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday night. I was all ready to go to sleep and then was like, I'm going to check my alarm to make sure so I can get up for the kids. And oh no. So that was a whole long thing. And now we're 36 hours removed from the trade. One thing I'll say is there was like a lot of, I totally understand this from fans of being like, you got to do something, like you got to match him. You can't let him. I think that that's really dangerous thinking, and it's almost impossible from a front office perspective. It's really difficult in 12 hours to completely reconfigure in terms of like reassess your team. Are the Nuggets really supposed to be like, wow, we can't match up with them? All we are is the number one team in the Western Conference that's been the best team in the league for 2 months, right? And then on top of it is, this is the one I really want to stress. There is no Kevin Durant counter.
That's the big one.
You can go get OG Anunoby. You know what happens? Kevin Durant cooks OG Anunoby. He's Kevin Durant. There's no stopping him. And honestly, this is one of the benefits I think of playing Durant. And I saw it when the Warriors played him with the Thunder, and I've seen it when the Rockets played him when he was on the Warriors. It's if you just basically settle in and put him into an isolation situation and live with it, make it as tough as possible. You have big, long defenders. You make it as tough as possible, and you focus on the other stuff. You can survive it because like those shots are tough, and sometimes the variance is going to go against you, and he's going to have 50, and sometimes the variance is going to go your way. And there's just no way. By the way, there was no way. You notice that OG Anunoby still a Toronto Raptor, and I know
it's wild. I think it's actually a really good thing for Denver that he stayed out there. I mean, he could have made Golden State better. He could have made Memphis better. He didn't.
The reports from Zach Lowe this morning are wild. Like the Grizzlies offered 3 first-round picks, and they're young guys, and the Raptors were like, "No, we want like a good like."
If that's true, it tells you how the Grizzlies think about themselves.
Yeah, and the Pelicans did the same. Like I heard that the Pelicans the Raptors wanted Dyson Daniels, Trey Murphy, and multiple picks.
Wild.
So
I've said this yesterday, but if I was New Orleans, I wouldn't want OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby, I do agree that he can be a bit of an overrated player, but if you don't have that mold of player, you need one. And I think that New Orleans has like 4 of them. Yeah. Those 2 guys you mentioned are 2 of them.
So what is your feeling on Durant landing on the Suns?
I mean, I think it's going to make. Here's my thought on the trade deadline. The more I've digested it, this is very much a day after take. I think it's a lot more concerning for next year, both what the Lakers did and what the Suns did than this year. And it is concerning this year. Like, they're the favorites. FanDuel has them as the favorite. So that didn't happen for no reason. But I do agree that I think that there's the thing about the Nuggets that I think is exciting is that there is a compounding interest on their offensive talents. They all come together to make this great unit. I think there'll be a little bit of diminishing returns for Phoenix. They're going to be great. They're going to be pretty much unguardable, especially in the clutch. I think they're going to be unguardable. But I don't know that it's like, oh, the synergy of those three guys plus Ayton is going to come together in this great way. I think it's just a little bit more of they're going to have multiple guys that are hard to guard one-on-one with very short runway to create chemistry and not a lot of defense and not a lot of depth. So I think they're vulnerable. I think that Denver can get them. I think Denver can outduel them. I'm not like, it's not hopeless to me, but I do think that it is one of these ones where you're going to be very annoyed this summer of all the names they sign to go down and spend a year in Phoenix with that team.
That's probably true. The other thing I would add is, and I said this last night on Blackburn's show, like it's going to be hard. Winning a championship was always going to be hard. Whether it was a trade or a team gets hot and they're just playing great, there's going to be a series where you're like, I thought we would handle these guys, and it's way tougher than you expect. If you're going to win a title, there's going to be those series. I made the mention of the 2008 Celtics, which are one of the best teams that we've ever seen, went 7 games with the Atlanta Hawks in the first round.
Right.
Like, that's how it goes. And so it's funny. You have often made the comparison of this team and kind of what they can be to that 2014 Spurs team. And to me, more than ever, like this Nuggets team is positioned to be this, like the Spurs in a more non-basketball X's and O's or talent or even philosophical way, but more in the sense that there were always all of these moves and all of these big things and all of the headlines and all of the attention and drama. And then you would look up and be like, oh, by the way, the Spurs have 67 wins and they're the number 1 seed. And oh, look, they're back in the finals again. And like, that's what you want to build. And like the Spurs did it from the very start with Tim Duncan, and the Nuggets didn't with Jokic because they had David Robinson going into that. But like the Nuggets have stability around Nikola. They have a superstar that is low drama, that isn't going to cause chaos the way that some stars do. And they have a really sustainable system, and they've had an ownership, to its credit, has stepped up and paid. So to me, they're in a pretty good spot now where it's like the Nuggets are going to go in as like the 1 seed that nobody believes in. How perfect is that? You have home court and nobody's going to believe in you.
I know it really is a nice spot for Denver to be in. I do think that's a good one. I mean, here's the thing about the Nuggets. They have not been consistently great this season. They've had like 9-game stretches, 5-game stretches here or there where they look really good. I think it's the biggest thing for me where I will pick them to win the title if I can just see them hold that level of play for 3-4 weeks, post All-Star break, which is when you would usually, zero in like that to begin with. So we've seen where Denver gets the ball popping and everybody plays well and the defense shows up. And if we see that team consistently, then I'll like their chances even against that Suns team.
Let's talk about this for a minute, because I think we need to help folks with this. Ryan Reed says our bench is so susceptible and often a huge issue. Truly, how much of an issue do you see that being in the playoffs? So the average player for the Nuggets the starters are playing around 32, 33 minutes. In an average playoff game, you're going to play closer to 38 in the beginning of the series, and you'll play closer to 42 to 44 by the end of it. Like, that's just the reality as it gets tighter and tougher. So the margins for how long these players are on court, it changes dramatically. Nikola plays the first quarter. He usually leaves. He's been leaving around the 1 minute mark of the first quarter over the last, 15, 20 games. He comes back in around between the 8-minute mark and the 7-minute mark. Lately has been his rotation. So that is about 6 minutes of time in the first half. He probably plays the entire first quarter in the playoffs. And then he probably comes back in between the 9-minute mark and the 8-minute mark. So you're talking about 3 minutes of play that you got to be on the floor without Nikola Jokic on average. Like by the end of it, it's going to be like 2. And the damage you can do in that time with this is the thing. You just have to get to where you're not like last night was bad. Like last night was bad. You're absolutely right. But last night was bad because they were without Jamal. Like this is like really important. They will stagger more in the playoffs. So you're probably going to see not just Jamal stagger with the second unit, but you're probably going to see it being Jamal. And then by the time that there's like whoever is an issue in the matchup that they're facing, another starter will probably stagger too. You agree?
I do, but I think the more important point to me, at least, is that we don't know what the bench looks like. I know that's a bit of a cop-out, but Thomas Bryant does change the equation. I think the Nuggets might look for somebody in the buyout market in the point guard spot. That might also change what the bench looks like. So we've seen the bench this year that featured Davon Reed. He played for a multiple week stretch for some reason, and we saw what that looked like. We saw a bench unit that featured DeAndre Jordan and Jeff Green at the same time. We saw bench lineups that featured one or the other. I think we should just wait and hold the panic until you see what the actual bench lineup looks like. That would be my big take. I mean, last night, I'm with you. The group that they played was not indicative of a normal group. It was missing both Zeke and Jamal and Thomas Bryant.
I want to talk to you about another series of trades, rather, to get your thoughts on it, because Hurricane's in a bad place because of this. He's been pretty rattled over the last 24 hours. Hurricane says the Lakers being good scares me much more than KD to the Suns. There's no way the Nuggets beat a Lakers team with LeBron James in the playoffs. I can feel the 1-8 upset coming. Lakers add, let's see, they add Malik Beasley, D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, Mo Bamba.
I think that's it.
And that's it on top of Rui. What are your thoughts on the Lakers now, as somebody who has oftentimes shared his anxiety about Lakers matchups?
I mean, the thing with the Lakers is they were of no concern prior to the deadline. So even if they are a moderate concern now, it still is an improved concern level. I'm with Hurricane in this one way. That series to me would be very uncomfortable. I think Denver's better. Like every box I go down, I'm like, yeah, Denver's better. Denver's better. But it is hard to beat LeBron in the playoffs, and we just haven't really ever seen it. The only time LeBron's gone down has been pre-playoffs. So we'll have to see. So I agree with him that I think it's a concern, and I agree with him that I think they are going to be in contention for the 8th seed. So we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out.
I looked the stat up this morning, and I just keep the idea of the Lakers is like, well, Anthony Davis missed a lot of time, and like LeBron's been in and out and these kind of things. I looked up their record with LeBron and AD this season. They're 11-13.
I mean, yes, but we've also seen them win a championship as a duo. Like, I just as much as I'm with you, they have not looked good recently. It's still about you just get them in a playoff series and see what happens. And somebody I saw in the comment just said, bring back Bookie for the Lakers. I actually think that might be more likely that he goes to the Lakers and then creates another player for them. So I don't know. I think the Lakers will be tough if they make it, but I also think there's a chance the Lakers don't make it. I mean, I don't even know how motivated they are to make it. I think they are. This move, I think the best analysis I've seen on these moves is that it actually sets them up better for an off-season pivot. So be prepared for that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They have more actual NBA players, and that helps. Like, there's so many guys on that roster. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, these guys are in the rotation. You're trying to win like 45 plus games with these guys. And yeah, like, again, it'll be tough. It'll be tougher than like you would rather get Portland than probably the Lakers. You'd rather face Dame than LeBron. But I just don't know what their ceiling really looks like. Maybe all these moves come together and it's perfect, and Malik turns into the star that he's always believed himself to be, and D'Lo fits perfectly and isn't the defensive sieve that he's been.
I like this one. Just make the Lakers good enough that the Pels don't get Wemby. It's kind of true. Like, the best case scenario is that the Lakers make the play-in and lose, and are therefore very low odds to win the actual Wemby sweepstakes that would go to New Orleans.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about that, whatever that game was last night. We'll touch on that real quickly before we get out of here on Locked On Nuggets. First thing to tell you about FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book and the official sports betting partner of Locked On. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They've got so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. I have some MVP cross futures. I've got a Mahomes Jokic ticket that is absolutely looking like it's red hot right now. Very excited about that. I got that at FanDuel. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, final segment with Adam Mares. Hope you guys are having a good Friday. Hope you guys have a great weekend as well. Adam, so the Nuggets, after their fan base was stressed out over losing Bones Hyland for 2 picks and freaking out over the Kevin Durant trade, in very typical fashion, decided to make things worse by pretty much no-showing versus the Orlando Magic. Aaron Gordon was phenomenal, but the defense was terrible and the bench was a disaster. What are your thoughts on that game in Orlando last night?
It was just a bad game, and it's weird. The Nuggets came out 12-0 start. You thought, okay, maybe they're going to be locked in for this one, and then it just completely dissolved from there. It was disappointing. I think Orlando actually presents a tough matchup for Denver in an interesting way. They're very long, and they pack the paint. They dare you to shoot. Denver was without Jamal Murray last night, which I think affected their ability to shoot. My only takeaway that is of any consequence going forward outside of, like, again, Nuggets at Magic is probably the least consequential game. It's in the tier of least consequential games you can play in a season. So I don't think there's a whole lot to read in. But if there's one thing I read into it, it's that Bruce Brown and Ish Smith both, I thought, did a very poor job of running point guard last night. Yeah. And if you're concerned about the Nuggets, it's that they have a lack of point guards. And last night was Exhibit A.
I have to ask you this question. At what point, how likely is it that Bruce Brown is going to be significantly better defending tough matchups in the playoffs than he's been in the regular season?
I don't think he will be. I think Bruce Brown's value defensively is like the energy he brings, just like getting loose balls and that kind of stuff, but he's not a stopper.
I would agree. Which is kind of concerning because that's like part of the equation is if you need to go do it, it's, Bruce, KCP, and Aaron. And it seems like MPJ is legitimately giving you a better shot just with his length lately, especially considering the offensive edge there. Maybe there'll be matchups that really give an edge, but it's been a little bit surprising that Bruce hasn't been more impactful on the defensive end than I kind of thought he would have been.
It is funny to me that we talked, even of going back to the offensive end, that we talked about the previous game without Jamal Murray, how they had 44 assists. Ball was popping. They only had 3 assists in the first quarter of that game last night. It was the exact opposite.
Yeah. Starters, I will say this. I want to credit Jokic for he came out flat, but I thought end of second and third, he came out with the requisite amount of energy and got them back into the game. Aaron was fantastic last night. It's a bummer that they wasted that performance from him.
Yeah, Michael Porter was bad. I mean, he missed shots. When I say that Orlando packs the paint and you have to knock down threes on him, Michael Porter went 3 of 10 from the 3-point line, or 3 of 12, something like that. I think 3 of 12. A lot of this is if he just hits 1 or 2 more, I think the game is a little bit different. But the last thing is the bench had 10 points. The bench was,
and this is like what's tough, right? Is like you can probably even still survive the bench as horrible as it was. But you were going to have to outscore Orlando because nobody was invested in defending yesterday. But yeah, the bench was atrocious. No Jamal, no Zeke. I think both those guys would have helped. So, I mean, I have a hard time like getting worked up about it. I will say this, like they are going to have to, they're going to need to start showing that they can have more than one good road game every once in a while.
Yeah, that part's important. I don't think it's going to come.
I struggle because I'm like, well, do you expect them to win all the games because they're unbeatable at home? And I'm like, no. But even just like, hey, you played well, but the other team played great and you lost is a little bit more encouraging rather than just like, you look like trash on the road.
I think to me, it's the win profile and the loss profile. Like they just are in need of a good win on the road.
Agree. So let's Diamond says, how many games is Murray going to rest come playoff time? The answer is 0. That's just
I mean, it is. I will say though, nothing that Murray is out with his knee swellness. Like we'll see if he's back tomorrow. But it's something to kind of just monitor.
The buyout market is something everybody's really talking about. I haven't spoken to anybody in the front office about buyouts. Have you? Have you talked to anybody?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I talked yesterday, but I didn't talk about buyout market.
I don't know. A lot of times the buyout guys are looking for there's not like a standard here. It's like you have to think about what the agenda of those guys is.
Right.
And a lot of it is usually if they're older, they're just like, I want to win a championship somewhere nice. That's why Miami is like a prime buyout spot. Lakers, obviously. Clippers. Phoenix will probably, like, if they have a roster spot, could snag one. I don't know that like guys are like, I really want to go to, but if they're like, I really want to win a championship and I like the way that these guys play, that can help a little bit. I also just I don't think that Reggie Jackson makes them better. I don't think that John Wall makes them better. I don't think Russell Westbrook makes them better. I don't think
George Hill.
Don't think George Hill makes them better. I think Danny Green would be a good ad. If Danny Green were interested, that's the only guy in the buyout market that I have actual interest in, that I think like, oh yeah, that would work. Like Danny could come in and just like, hey, add another guard that can defend, that can shoot. He's not the same guy. He's coming off of an ACL injury after Joel fell into him trying to flop. Everyone forgets that and it upsets me. I think Danny Green is a good fit, and it goes with the Spurs concept that I talked about earlier. But like Noah Romero says Terrence Ross. Guys, I've watched Terrence Ross's entire career. That you talk about a guy is not playable in a playoff series. It's Terrence Ross.
It's Will Barton 2.0. It's so funny. And I love this comment somebody had is the Suns are going to end up picking up Will Barton and everyone's going to panic.
Yeah.
Everyone that hates Will Barton, it's like, they got Barton.
Logan says Derrick Rose. Ignoring all the off-court stuff. The fit isn't terrible there as a backup point guard, but I don't know that he can play much with Jokic. He's really at the end of his. When Tibbs gives up on Derrick Rose, that's a bad sign. Like that's you're really kind of in it there now. Anybody else that you think we should talk about?
No, I'm just gonna block somebody in the comments. No, I mean, I'm curious to see. The Reggie Jackson to me is like more intriguing. The thing is, it's a loud move, man. Like that's not a small. Oh, he'll just fit in around the edges. That's like that's like a big move. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I do think I am worried though about Denver's backup point guard situation. I will say that. Like,
there's a lot of folks want Westbrook in the comments.
That's wild to me.
And I am a Russ guy. Been a Russ guy since he started, like since a rookie. Like what happened to his career pains me. You absolutely cannot have a non-shooter in that second unit. You can't do it.
Right.
As many things as he brings to the table, like, and Russ's attitude is not going to mesh. And I don't know if Russ wants to come off the bench.
Oh, Pat Bev. Pat Bev.
The idea of Pat Bev, I think, is the guy that everybody's wanted Denver to have, the very brash, outspoken, tough guy thing is definitely Bev, because like he's had to absolutely just snarl for everything he's ever gotten. Like he's had to fight for everything. He was playing in Russia, for God's sakes. At the same time, he's really emotionally, there's a fine line there, and he tends to go over a little bit more. He gets angry and out, and like, and you can say like that can be a good thing. It can be, but you have to be able to control it pretty perfectly, and he doesn't always do that. It's one of the reasons I really like. So I bet the Wolves to beat the Grizzlies last year in the playoffs, and I won money because I took the +2.5 on the series line. But one of the things that really cost them is I forgot that like their emotion, the guy that was going to be on the court to like calm them down was Pat Beverley, right? And he wouldn't need to be that on this team, but it's just like an idea of like, I'm not, and I don't really trust Bev as a shooter enough either to really kind of trust it. It wouldn't be, that one's not as bad, but if I got my choice between Danny Green and Pat Bev, I'd take Danny Green.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm worried about the point guard spot. I'm worried about it. I think they could use another point guard. I mean, Murray, how many games is he going to rest down the stretch? I think he should rest a decent amount. It's a lot of games that you're going to have just somebody that can run point. And right now, there's not a single player I trust Denver to run point.
So you think they should get one of the point guards that are out there?
It's tough, man, because I don't like any of these names. They're like all my least favorite point guards.
Yeah. PJ
Dozier. I mean, was it Dragic? Goran Dragic, is he like an option as a buyout guy?
If he gets bought out, he's definitely worth it as a buyout guy.
He just is like steady. He's less loud. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he's less of like changing.
I don't like him as a trade option. I like him as a buyout option. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I think he probably just winds up going to Dallas.
That's true. Although we have our own Slovenian.
That's true. That's true.
Come on, Vlatko, get on the recruiting trail.
Someone
Jackson, with composure. Like someone says, someone with composure. Probably not. All right.
Singer said Reggie was at the top of the list. We'll see.
He said he was near the top of the list. There's an important distinction.
I'm
serious. I'm dead serious.
All right. That's going to wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Have yourselves a great weekend. We'll see you guys on Monday with another show. We'll touch base with you then. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.